welcome to the Radio Revenue Podcast.
Glad to be here.
Imagine for a second the incredibly complex, just completely invisible global machinery that operates behind the scenes to get a single life-saving pill from a laboratory bench into your medicine cabinet.
It is a massive journey.
Right, it takes years, sometimes decades, and costs literally billions of dollars. But how does it actually happen? Like, who coordinates the massive amounts of information required to prove a drug is actually safe and effective?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question.
Exactly. So today, our mission for this deep dive is to explore the massive intersection of big data, artificial intelligence, and clinical trials. And our map for this journey is the 2025 Form 10K from a company called IQVIA Holdings Inc.
Yeah, and IQVIA is one of those companies that is absolutely fundamental to the modern global healthcare system, yet the average person on the street has probably never even heard of them.
I certainly hadn't before we started digging into this.
Right, but the sheer scale of what we are going to look at today is staggering. They essentially act as the central nervous system for global pharmaceutical development.
I really like that analogy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring you the big, mind-bending facts from this 10K. And I'm counting on you to decode the complex strategy and, the financial implications behind them. We have a lot of ground to cover.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's unpack this. The sheer data scale and scope of IQVIA. I was reading through this filing, and the numbers are honestly hard to wrap your head around.
Okay.
We are talking about 93,000 employees.
Spread across more than 100 countries, yeah.
And they have 150,000 different data suppliers feeding them information across over 1 million data feeds globally. And this all culminates in a proprietary data pool of 68 petabytes.
Which is a number so large it almost loses its meaning.
I mean, what is a petabyte, really, to a normal person?
Well, to put 68 petabytes in perspective for you, if you took a standard MP3 file of a song, you would have to leave it playing continuously for roughly 130,000 years to match that amount of data.
Wait, 130,000 years?
Give or take a few centuries, yeah. It is an almost unfathomable ocean of information.
130,000 years of music. That really puts it into perspective. And because they have this much data, the filing notes that they track information and insights on approximately 90% of the world's pharmaceuticals based on 2024 sales.
It's massive.
90%. I mean, if a drug is bought or sold almost anywhere on Earth, IQVIA probably has a data point on it.
What's fascinating here is that this isn't just raw, unstructured data sitting in a server farm somewhere. We are talking about over 1.2 billion comprehensive, non-identified patient records.
Okay.
But the real magic, and really the core of their business model, is how they actually handle all of that. They use what they call internally developed tokenization engines.
Now, hold on. Tokenization engines. That sounds like something out of a cyberpunk novel. How does that actually work in this context? Because my immediate thought is if they have my pharmacy records and my doctor visits and my lab results, couldn't someone piece all that together to figure out exactly who I am? That sounds like a massive privacy risk.
It's a great question, and it's exactly why they built this specific engine. Think of tokenization like a highly secure digital fingerprint.
Okay.
In the healthcare world, your information is scattered everywhere. You have pharmacy records in one system, medical claims in another, and electronic health records somewhere else entirely.
Right. None of these systems talk to each other.
Exactly. But to understand a patient's full healthcare journey, which is vital for medical research scientists, need to connect those dots. But crucially, they have to do it without ever exposing your actual identity.
Right. Nobody wants their personal medical history floating around a corporate database with their name attached to it.
Nobody. So a tokenization engine essentially strips away the personally identifiable information, your name, your address, your social security number, and it replaces it with a unique, encrypted, anonymous token.
Ah, I see.
This allows IQVIA to connect all those disparate data sets longitudinally. That means they can track the progression of a disease over time across different medical providers while remaining a global leader in protecting individual patient privacy. The researchers see the medical journey, but they never see the person.
So, if you're listening to this right now, your own anonymized health trends could theoretically be a tiny drop in this massive 68 petabyte ocean, helping scientists spot disease patterns or correlate the precise treatment path needed for better outcomes.
Very likely, yes.
You are helping advance science without even knowing it, and your privacy is totally locked down. That is incredible.
Precisely. They are standardizing, curating, and structuring this massive data pool to help biotech and pharmaceutical companies run their organizations more efficiently. It is the ultimate foundation for everything else they do, because you just can't build the future of medicine on messy data.
Which brings us perfectly to the next piece of the puzzle. Here's where it gets really interesting. The evolving landscape of drug development itself. The 10K highlights a major trend, which is that clinical trials are just getting harder.
Much harder.
We're moving away from an era of simple chemical pills, the kinds of things you just press into a tablet and put in a bottle. We're moving toward highly complex treatments like biologics, genetically targeted therapies, and gene and stem cell therapies.
Just to quickly clarify for anyone wondering, a biologic isn't mixed in a chemistry lab like aspirin. It's a complex medicine grown from living cells.
Right.
And that fundamental shift in complexity changes the entire business model of clinical trials. If we step back and look at the macro trends, IQVIA is operating in a total addressable market that they estimate at $335 billion.
Wow.
That encompasses outsourced research and development, real-world evidence, and commercial operations.
$335 billion. That is a staggering amount of money pouring into research.
It is, and it's driven by volume and complexity. The IQVIA Institute estimates that we are going to see about 375 new molecular entities, or NMEs, approved between 2026 and 2030.
Let me stop you there. New molecular entities, is that just industry jargon for a brand new, never-before-seen drug?
Essentially, yes. It's an active ingredient that has never before been approved for marketing in the United States, and 375 of those over a 5-year span breaks down to about 75 new drugs per year.
Okay.
For context, the historical average over the past decade was only 68 per year, so the pipeline is actually accelerating.
So we have more drugs being approved, but the pathways to get them approved are becoming more complex and demanding. How does a company actually solve for that complexity? Because you can't just put an ad in the local paper to find patients for a highly specific, genetically targeted stem cell trial.
No, definitely not.
The filing outlines some incredibly specific innovations IQVIA is using. For example, they mention the Avicare Clinical Research Network. This is a site management organization that orchestrates over 180 investigators across nearly 50 locations.
That network is vital because finding the right patients for these highly targeted therapies is quite literally like finding a needle in a haystack.
Right.
If a new drug only works for a specific genetic mutation of a specific type of rare cancer, you need a massive, highly coordinated network to find there's few eligible patients globally. But IQVIA is also pushing hard into what they call decentralized trials, which is a huge paradigm shift.
I read about this in the filing, and it seems like a total game changer for the patient experience.
It completely flips the script. Historically, to be in a clinical trial, you had to live near a major research hospital. You had to take time off work, travel there constantly, sit in waiting rooms. It was a massive burden.
It's basically a part-time job just being a patient.
Exactly. Decentralized trials use direct-to-patient recruitment, remote nursing where a professional actually comes to your living room, and remote data entry via wearables. They are literally bringing the trial to the patient.
That makes so much sense. It reduces the burden on the patient, opens the trial up to a much more diverse demographic who maybe couldn't afford to travel, and speeds up the whole data collection process.
Win-win for everyone.
But I have to say, the innovation that absolutely blew my mind was this concept they call secondary control arms. I've watched a lot of medical documentaries, and I thought I understood how trials work, but this is wild.
It is a revolutionary concept, and it goes right back to that 68 petabyte data ocean we were talking about earlier.
Okay, connect those dots for me.
So in a traditional clinical trial, you have the active group getting the experimental drug and the control group getting a placebo, a sugar pill.
Right, the gold standard.
It's the gold standard of proving a drug actually works. But what if the disease is incredibly rare? Or what if it's a severe pediatric oncology trial?
Yeah.
Ethically, telling half the patients they are getting a placebo when they are desperately ill is incredibly complicated, sometimes impossible.
Right, no parent wants to enroll their sick child in a trial if there's a 50% chance they get a sugar pill. They want the treatment.
Exactly. Because IQVIA has those 1.2 billion non-identified patient records, they can sometimes create a secondary control arm entirely out of real-world historical data.
Wow.
They take the experimental patients who are receiving the new drug, And they comb through their database to find historical patients who have the exact same characteristics. Same age, same disease progression, same medical background.
That is brilliant.
They then compare the trial results against the historical data. It can literally eliminate the need for a physical placebo group in certain critical trials.
That is just incredible. We are talking about using massive data to spare actual living patients from having to take a placebo. That is a tangible, real-world benefit of big data.
It really is.
And of course, you can't talk about sifting through 68 petabytes of data or creating digital control arms in 2026 without bringing up the buzzword of the decade, artificial intelligence.
You knew it was coming.
It's everywhere. Which naturally brings us to the next major piece of this puzzle. How does an industry dealing with the most sensitive data imaginable, our health records, actually use AI safely? We've all seen public AI chatbots make ridiculous mistakes. You can't have a chatbot making mistakes with clinical trial data.
It is a delicate balance, and IQVIA is very specific about their approach. They call it healthcare-grade AI.
Okay, healthcare.
This is a critical distinction that they emphasize heavily in their 10K. They are not just taking a basic off-the-shelf chatbot from a tech giant and plugging it into medical records.
Goodness.
Healthcare-grade AI is precision-engineered specifically for the life sciences sector. It combines their deep domain expertise with AI models that are trained specifically on their massive, diverse health data. It is built for the high standards of trust, scalability, and precision that the pharmaceutical industry actually demands.
And looking at the 10K, they list some very rigorous safeguards they've put in place to manage this. It's not the Wild West. They have established a Center for Defensible Data and AI. They have an AI governance council guiding their employees.
Very important steps.
And one detail that really stood out to me, they use private instances of large language models. So for you listening, what that means is that if IQVIA feeds a proprietary, highly sensitive medical data set into an AI to look for patterns, that data is in a walled garden.
Yes.
It's a private instance, so proprietary IQVIA content is never leaked back out to the internet to train the public models that everyone else uses to write emails or generate recipes.
This raises an important question. How do you innovate at that breakneck speed while staying within the law? Because the law is scrambling to catch up to AI. The regulatory tightrope here is massive.
Definitely.
The 10K specifically mentions how IQVIA must comply with emerging, highly complex AI legislation like the European Union's AI Act and the Colorado AI Act.
Right.
These laws require strict procedures for higher-risk AI activities. IQVIA has to rigorously test their AI models for errors, bias, and what the industry calls hallucinations. That's where the AI confidently makes up completely incorrect information.
Which is funny when you ask an AI for a historical fact and it invents a battle that never happened. But it's not funny in medicine.
Precisely. In healthcare, an AI hallucination isn't just an annoyance. It could result in misinterpreting patient toxicity data, which could derail a multi-million-dollar trial or literally put people at risk.
Yeah, the stakes are life and death.
Their ability to navigate this regulatory landscape and prove that their AI is defensible and hallucination-free is actually a massive competitive advantage for them. Pharmaceutical companies don't want to build this infrastructure themselves. They want to outsource it to someone who has already figured out the compliance.
So we have this massive data pool, incredibly complex clinical trials, and cutting-edge, highly regulated AI. But how does all of this translate into actual business?
Let's follow the money.
Let's do it. Let's look at their financials, a major upcoming reorganization they announced, and the very real risks to their business model. Let's start with the 2025 financial wins outlined in the source. Total revenue for the year was $16.31 billion.
A huge year.
That is a 5.9% increase from 2024. And their operating cash flow was a massive $2.65 billion. They are generating a tremendous amount of cash from this operation.
They certainly are. And to understand where that cash comes from, we have to look at their three current reporting segments. First, you have Research and Development Solutions, which is by far their biggest segment. This generated $8.89 billion. This is the clinical trial outsourcing, the laboratory services, the decentralized trials we discussed, really the heavy lifting of getting drugs approved.
Next is Technology and Analytics Solutions, bringing in $6.62 billion. This is the software, the real-world data, the SaaS platforms, which just means software as a service, the cloud-based tools that pharma companies subscribe to in order to run their commercial operations.
And finally, the smallest segment is Contract Sales and Medical Solutions, which generated $788 million. This is where they actually provide the physical sales forces and medical liaisons for pharmaceutical companies.
Okay, but there's a big change coming, right?
Now, here is a crucial detail from the 10K that really shows where the pharmaceutical industry as a whole is heading. Effective January 1st, 2026, IQVIA is making a major strategic shift.
Okay.
They are completely absorbing that third segment, contract sales and medical solutions, into the technology and analytics segment. They are renaming this newly combined powerhouse commercial solutions.
So they're basically rolling the boots on the ground sales team into the IT and data analytics team. Why make that shift now?
Because it reflects the evolution of how drugs are actually sold today. You know, we used to have this image of a pharmaceutical sales rep just knocking on a doctor's door, dropping off a glossy brochure, and maybe bringing a catered lunch for the office staff.
Classic TV trope.
Those days are largely over. Today, contract sales are deeply intertwined with data, analytics, and software. A modern sales rep needs predictive analytics to know exactly which doctor to talk to, at what time, and what specific data points will resonate regarding a highly complex new biologic therapy.
It's all targeted now.
By merging these segments, IQVIA is aligning its internal structure with the reality that commercializing a drug is now a highly technology-driven, data-heavy process. The sales rep is essentially a data analyst out in the field.
That makes total sense. You can't separate the message from the data anymore. Now, as with any major corporation, every 10K has an extensive risk factors section. We need to talk about how political and legislative changes impact their business.
Always a major factor.
And just as a quick heads up for you listening, we are absolutely not taking political sides here or endorsing any particular policies. We are strictly looking at the business risks exactly as IQVIA outlined them to their investors in this public document.
That's right. Because IQVIA serves the global biopharmaceutical industry, any legislation that impacts pharmaceutical pricing directly impacts them, even if IQVIA doesn't manufacture any drugs themselves.
The text cites several specific pieces of legislation that are on their radar. It mentions the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, which contains specific drug price negotiation provisions.
Right.
It also calls out a brand new piece of legislation enacted in July 2025 called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or OBBA, which made several changes to U.S. federal income tax law and extended provisions from the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
And there's one more big one.
Right. They note a May 2025 executive order from the Trump administration regarding most favored nation prescription drug pricing, which aims to bring U.S. drug prices in line with what comparably developed nations pay.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, why does a company that just handles data and runs clinical trials care so much about drug pricing laws?
Yeah, why is it their problem?
It comes down to the macroeconomics of their clients' budgets. If these healthcare reform laws or executive orders successfully place downward pressure on pharmaceutical pricing and limit the overall profitability of new drugs, big pharma companies are going to feel the squeeze.
Makes sense.
If their profit margins shrink, the first thing they often evaluate is their budget. They may be forced to cut their research and development spending or reduce the size of their commercial sales forces.
It's a massive domino effect. Since IQVIA's entire business model relies on those pharma companies outsourcing that R&D and commercial work to them, a hit to Big Pharma's bottom line is a direct hit to IQVIA's bottom line.
Exactly.
If the drug companies have less money to spend on running trials, the company running the trials for them makes less money.
It's a deeply symbiotic relationship. IQVIA's continued growth is tied directly to the continued funding, profitability, and innovation within the broader life sciences sector. If the ecosystem thrives, they thrive. If the ecosystem tightens its belt, IQVIA feels the pinch.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring it all together for you. We've explored an absolute behemoth of a company today. The next time you hear on the news about a groundbreaking medical breakthrough, maybe a new genetic therapy, or a rare disease cure, or even the next time you just pick up a routine prescription from your local pharmacy, you should know that its journey to you was likely guided by an invisible web.
A very complex web.
A web made of 68 petabytes of data, healthcare-grade artificial intelligence, and sprawling, decentralized clinical trial networks managed by companies exactly like IQVIA. They are the silent engine of the global healthcare system.
And I'll leave you with this final and provocative thought to mull over. We've talked today about how IQVIA is already using massive data sets to create secondary control arms, effectively replacing human placebo groups in certain trials by looking at historical patients.
Yeah, that was amazing.
If sophisticated algorithms and historical data can safely do that today, how close are we to a future where entire phases of human clinical trials are simulated entirely inside an AI engine? Imagine a world where we know exactly how a drug will perform across diverse populations, accounting for age, genetics, and environment, before a single physical dose is ever administered to a living human being. The sheer scale of the data we've seen today suggests that future might be much closer than we think.
It was a Revenue Radio podcast. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay updated with our latest analyses.